My family always told me I was just too sensitive and needed to toughen up. But after my breakdown at 19, I discovered a generational pattern of hidden trauma no one ever talked about, and uncovering the truth nearly destroyed me before it set me free. Growing up, I was the emotional one, the sensitive kid, the one who cried too easily, felt things too deeply, and was always told I needed to grow thicker skin. At family dinners, when things got tense, as they often did, I feel the air shift before anyone else noticed. Someone would make a passive aggressive comment, and I'd instinctively shrink into myself, heart racing. If I spoke up, my mom would sigh and say, "Not everything is about you, Emily." If I stayed quiet, the knot in my stomach would just get tighter. By the time I was 10, I'd learned the rules. Don't overreact. Don't cry in public. Don't be so dramatic. If you're hurt, swallow it. If you're scared, smile. If you feel like breaking down, wait until you're alone in your room. But it wasn't just at home. At school, I had a teacher in sixth grade who once told me, "You're too fragile for the real world. You'll never survive if you don't toughen up." I remember the way the class laughed, not cruelly, just dismissively, like they all agreed. And maybe they did. Still, I tried to push through it. I joined soccer to prove I wasn't weak, even though I hated the noise and the pressure. I went to parties in high school and forced smiles through panic attacks in the bathroom. I dated a guy who told me I was cute when I cried, and I stayed with him for 6 months longer than I should have just to prove I wasn't as emotionally unstable as he said. By the time I turned 18, I was exhausted from performing. I got into college and moved 2 hours away from home, thinking I'd finally have space to breathe. I told myself I'd start over, be stronger, braver, better. But you can't run from what you carry inside. And I carried everything. I didn't know it then, but I was already breaking. The cracks were just invisible to everyone else, everyone except me. College was supposed to be my escape, but by the end of my first semester, I felt more trapped than ever. I didn't make friends easily. Every conversation felt like a test I was failing. I'd lie in bed at night replaying every awkward moment from the day, convinced everyone thought I was weird or pathetic. I stopped going to class some days because I couldn't handle the anxiety. I started having these episodes where my chest would tighten, my hands would go numb, and I'd feel like I couldn't breathe. I didn't tell anyone, not my professors, not my roommates, not even my family. Especially not my family, because I already knew what they'd say. "You're being too sensitive again, Emily. Everyone gets stressed. You just need to stop overthinking everything." So I hid it. I smiled on FaceTime calls with my mom and told her everything was great. I posted photos of sunsets and coffee cups on Instagram, captioned with quotes about finding peace. But inside, I was falling apart. The breakdown happened 2 weeks before finals. I remember it vividly. I was in the library, trying to study for a psychology exam, when I suddenly felt like I was going to die. My heart was racing, my hands shaking, my vision tunneling. I stumbled out into the hallway and collapsed on the floor. Someone called campus security. I was taken to the student health center, where they told me I'd had a panic attack. When I called my mom from the clinic, her first words were, "What did you do this time?" I tried to explain, but she cut me off. "Emily, this is college. Everyone is stressed. You need to stop making a big deal out of everything." That night, alone in my dorm room, I cried harder than I ever had. Not because of the panic attack, but because I finally realized I couldn't keep pretending. Something was wrong, really wrong, and no one in my life seemed to care enough to ask why. After that night, I started seeing a campus therapist. At first, I was reluctant. I didn't know how to talk about what I was feeling. I'd spent my entire life pretending I was fine. But little by little, the walls started coming down. I told her about the pressure to always be strong, the way my family dismissed my feelings, the panic attacks that had started in middle school but were never taken seriously. One day, she said something that stuck with me. "Have you ever considered that your sensitivity isn't the problem, but maybe a symptom?" That question haunted me. As symptom of what? Over winter break, I went home and started looking through old photo albums and journals. I found a diary entry from when I was 11 where I wrote, I wish I could just stop feeling everything so much. Maybe then mom would love me more. I showed it to my therapist after break. She gently asked about my mom. I started sharing stories, how she rarely hugged me, how she always seemed angry, how she cried behind closed doors but never talked about it. Then I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. Like the time I walked in on her sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by broken dishes, sobbing into her hands. I was 8. She told me it was just a bad day and that I needed to stop being so nosy. Or the way my grandfather used to call her weak in front of everyone. How she'd laugh along, but her eyes always looked like they were holding something back. I brought it up with my aunt one day, casually, over lunch. Her face went pale. Your mom never told you about what happened when we were kids? What happened? She hesitated. It's not really my place to say, but let's just say, trauma runs deep in our family, and your mom, she never really dealt with hers. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that word, trauma. I thought of all the times I'd been told I was too emotional, all the times my mom had pushed me to be someone I wasn't, and suddenly it clicked. What if I wasn't the first one in my family to feel like this? What if the pain I'd been carrying wasn't entirely mine? After that conversation with my aunt, I couldn't stop digging. Something in me had shifted. I needed answers, not just for myself, but to understand the weight I'd been carrying my whole life. The pain didn't start with me, I realized, but it had lived through me. I called my aunt a few days later and asked directly, what happened to mom when she was younger? There was a long silence. She won't want you to know, she said quietly. She spent her whole life pretending it never happened. I'm not trying to hurt her, I told her. I need to know. She hesitated again, then sighed. Your mom and I didn't have an easy childhood, Emily. Our dad, your grandfather, he wasn't just strict. He was violent. He controlled everything. If she cried, he'd slap her. If she talked back, he'd lock her in the basement for hours. Your grandma didn't protect us. She was too scared herself. I felt the breath leave my body. She was never allowed to feel anything, she added. So when you came along, this sweet, sensitive little girl, your mom didn't know what to do with that. She saw herself in you, and she hated herself for it. Tears welled up in my eyes. My mom wasn't just emotionally distant, she was broken in ways I never imagined. And suddenly, I saw her differently. The constant dismissiveness, the cold remarks, the unwillingness to comfort me when I needed it, it wasn't because she didn't love me. It was because no one had ever comforted her. Generational trauma. I'd read about it in class, but I never thought I was living inside it. When I got back to college, I asked my therapist, how do you love someone who hurt you? But only because they were hurt first? She smiled sadly. That's the hardest kind of love. But it's also the kind that sets you free. I didn't talk to my mom about it right away. I wasn't ready. I was still angry, still hurt. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel broken, I felt aware. And that awareness was everything. I started journaling again, not just about my pain, but about my family's history. What I knew, what I'd uncovered, what had been passed down like invisible scars from one generation to the next. It didn't excuse everything, but it explained so much. One night, I wrote a letter to my mom. I didn't send it. I just needed to say the words. You taught me to survive, but not to feel. Now I'm learning how to do both, and I wish you could learn with me. It took months before I was ready to talk to my mom. By then, I'd been in therapy long enough to start understanding the patterns, not just in her, but in me. How I apologized too much. How I felt responsible for everyone's emotions. How I feared being too much because I'd always been told I was. When spring break came, I went home. Not because I wanted to, but because something in me said it was time. The first few days were awkward. I was different now. I saw things more clearly. And I think my mom sensed that. One night, we were sitting in the kitchen, just the two of us, and I finally said it. I know what happened to you. Her fork froze midair. I went on. Aunt Linda told me about Grandpa, about how he treated you. I know you didn't have anyone to protect you. And I think that pain never really left you. She didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at her plate like it held the whole story. Then, quietly, she whispered, "You weren't supposed to know." "I had to," I said, "because I thought something was wrong with me. My whole life, I felt broken, too sensitive, too weak. But I'm not. I was just carrying things that weren't mine." She looked up then. Her eyes were glassy. I don't think I'd ever seen her cry before, not really. "I didn't know how to be a mom to someone like you," she admitted. "You felt everything I tried to bury." It terrified me. For the first time, I saw the little girl in her, the one who never got to cry, never got to ask for help, never got to feel safe. We talked for hours that night, about her past, about mine, about how silence had nearly destroyed both of us. It wasn't perfect. She didn't magically become warm and nurturing overnight, but she listened. And that was the beginning. Since then, we've both been trying, slowly, imperfectly, to break the cycle. I still go to therapy. I still have bad days. But I no longer believe my sensitivity is a flaw. It's my strength. It's the very thing that helped me see the truth. And it's the reason the chain of trauma in my family ends with me. Because I won't raise kids who are told they're too emotional. I won't pass down silence, shame, or buried pain. I'll raise them to cry when they need to speak up when something hurts, to love fully, even when it's scary. I don't know what kind of mom I'll be someday, but I know I'll be a different one. And that difference, the one I fought so hard to make, is everything.